Have you ever wondered what it would be like to grow up without knowing anything about your parents? Imagine living your entire childhood in an orphanage, surrounded by friends who, like you, desperately seek answers about their origins. This is the reality of Emily, a young woman determined to unravel the secrets of her past. If you are enjoying this content, click on the bell and subscribe to the channel. This way you will help me reach 1,000 subscribers on the channel, and YouTube will deliver this and other videos to more people. Today, we're going to dive into Emily's exciting story, a girl who decides to accept a job at the company of a successful entrepreneur named Richard, a man with a past as mysterious as hers. What she didn't expect was that her journey in search of the truth would be full of twists, drama, and surprising revelations that would change her life forever. What if I told you that the secrets Emily is looking for are closer than she imagines? What if these secrets involved not only her own story but also the story of Richard and his wife, Sarah? Get ready for a narrative full of emotion and suspense, where each revelation brings us closer to an unexpected outcome. So come with me and discover how Emily's fate intertwines with that of Richard and Sarah, revealing truths that not even they could imagine. Are you ready for this journey? From a very young age, she lived in an orphanage, always wondering who her parents were and why they left her there. Emily was a curious and determined girl. Even facing daily challenges, she never lost hope of finding answers. At the orphanage, she stood out not only for her intelligence but also for her generous heart, always helping the younger ones. She was a kind of older sister to many children, and while taking care of others, she dreamed of the day she would finally discover the truth about her own story. Emily's life began to change when Richard, a successful entrepreneur, entered the scene. Richard was known for his brilliant career and his ability to transform companies into successes. But beyond his professional life, he was also a generous man concerned with the well-being of others. It was this concern that led him to the orphanage where Emily lived. Richard always had a generous heart, perhaps a way to compensate for the troubled past he rarely mentioned. When visiting the orphanage, he was immediately touched by Emily's story. There was something in her determination and her incessant search for truth that deeply moved him. He decided he wanted to help that young woman in some way. However, it wasn't just Richard's generosity that shaped the situation. Sarah, his wife, was an intelligent and perceptive woman. She always supported her husband's charity initiatives, but something about Emily made her suspicious. Sarah couldn't help but feel that there was more to Emily's story than it appeared. Even so, Richard made the decision to support the orphanage and specifically to offer an opportunity to Emily. He believed that by giving her a job in his company, he could help her build a better future, perhaps find the answers she was looking for. And so Emily left the orphanage for a new phase of her life, a path full of hopes, challenges, and, unbeknownst to her, secrets that could change everything. Richard opened a door, but what no one expected was that in doing so, he would also be opening the chest of secrets from his own past. Get ready for a journey of discoveries and surprising revelations, where Emily's search for answers intertwines with Richard and Sarah's story, revealing truths that no one could imagine. What does fate have in store for these characters? Let's find out together. Emily entered Richard's company with the same determination she had during all the years at the orphanage. She knew this was a unique opportunity and was determined to do her best. At first, she started in a modest position, helping with file organization and administrative tasks, but quickly her talent and dedication caught Richard's attention. Richard, observing Emily's performance, began to trust her more. He saw in her a reflection of his own struggle and determination. The conversations between the two went beyond work. Richard shared stories of his challenges in the business world, and Emily, in turn, talked about her experiences at the orphanage and her incessant search for the truth about her parents. These exchanges of confidences were building a relationship of trust between them. However, Sarah couldn't shake an uncomfortable feeling. Observing from afar, she noticed the growing bond between Emily and Richard and couldn't help but feel a certain distrust. She knew Richard was a generous person, but she also knew that people sometimes could have ulterior motives. Sarah began to suspect that Emily might be taking advantage of her husband's kindness to achieve hidden goals. While Richard saw Emily as a dedicated and hardworking young woman, Sarah saw a potential threat. Sarah's conversations with Richard about Emily were always cautious. She didn't want to appear jealous or irrational, but she also couldn't ignore her instinct. Emily, in turn, was focused on her work and the new life she was building. She appreciated the trust Richard placed in her and was determined not to disappoint him. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore Sarah's coldness. Emily noticed Sarah's cautious glances and indirect questions. Although she didn't understand why, she knew she needed to be careful. The relationship between Richard and Emily continued to grow, strengthened by mutual trust and respect. But the tension with Sarah was beginning to become an obstacle. Emily was at a critical point in her journey where every move could change the course of her life. And so, the opportunity Emily had been waiting for became not just a springboard for her future but also a minefield of mistrust and secrets. How would she navigate this complex web of relationships? The answers were beginning to reveal themselves, but the path was still long and full of surprises. Sarah couldn't ignore her intuition. Each day, the relationship between Richard and Emily seemed to grow closer, and the feeling of distrust grew within her. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah made a decision that would change the course of events. She hired a private investigator. The investigator, an experienced and discreet man, began his mission. He knew Sarah's trust was at stake and treated the case with the seriousness it deserved. His initial investigations focused on simple records such as school histories and public documents. But as he delved deeper, he began to find information that didn't add up. At first, the secrets the investigator uncovered were subtle, small inconsistencies in orphanage records, documents that seemed to have been altered. But soon he found something that changed everything. Among the old papers emerged the name of a man that triggered an immediate alert, an old business rival of Richard's, someone with whom he had had a fierce conflict years ago. The investigator knew he was just scratching the surface. He continued to dig, now with a clearer line to follow. And that's when he discovered the direct connection. Emily was the daughter of this rival, a man who had mysteriously disappeared after a series of heated disputes with Richard. The discovery was shocking and loaded with implications. Sarah, upon receiving the first information from the investigator, was stunned. The suspicions she had about Emily weren't even close to the complexity of the truth. Emily's presence in their lives now seemed to have a much deeper and potentially dangerous purpose. Sarah knew she needed to continue the investigation, but she also needed to decide how to handle these revelations without causing a disaster in Richard's family life and business. The investigator, in turn, continued his work with a new perspective. He knew that what was at stake was more than just Emily's past, it was the very integrity of Richard's family and the truth about a dark chapter in their history. The next discoveries promised to be even more revealing, and the tension was just beginning to rise. Meanwhile, Emily, oblivious to the investigation, continued her routine at the company, always seeking to stand out and gain Richard's trust. But without knowing it, she was at the center of a hurricane of secrets about to be revealed, a hurricane that had the potential to change everything she knew. With each step of the investigation, Sarah found herself more divided. The truth she sought so much could destroy the trust Richard had in Emily and, worse, could shake the very structure of her family. But the search for truth was now inescapable, and the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together in unexpected and alarming ways. The investigation continued at full steam, and the investigator knew he was close to a major revelation. He found documents that directly linked Emily to Richard's old rival, a man named Marcus who had mysteriously disappeared after a series of heated business disputes. The confirmation came through adoption records and old documents that clearly showed Emily's connection to Marcus. Sarah, upon receiving this information, felt a mixture of shock and dread. Knowing that Emily was the daughter of someone Richard considered a mortal enemy completely changed her perspective. Sarah knew that this discovery could deeply shake Richard and the trust he had built with Emily was in imminent danger. But the secret didn't stay hidden for long. The investigator, in his diligence, made a slip by contacting an old acquaintance of Marcus. This woman, on an impulse, decided to seek out Emily directly, revealing the truth about her origin. The news hit Emily like a blow. Knowing that her father was a man involved in serious disputes with Richard left her confused and disoriented. Emily decided she needed to confront Richard. She couldn't continue working in his company without revealing this truth. The trust Richard had placed in her deserved honesty, even if it meant risking everything. In a tense encounter, Emily told Richard about the discovery of her true origin. Richard was stunned. The revelation that Emily was Marcus's daughter brought up painful memories and accumulated anger. He felt betrayed, not by Emily directly, but by fate that seemed to be playing with him. The relationship he had built with Emily, based on trust and mutual respect, was now under a shadow of doubt and mistrust. Emily, in turn, felt lost. She had always sought the truth about her parents but never imagined that this truth could cause so much damage. The crisis of confidence between her and Richard was palpable. Richard needed time to process everything, and Emily feared that this time could mean the end of the opportunity she valued so much. Sarah, watching all this closely, found herself in a dilemma. On one hand, she felt that her initial suspicions had foundation. But on the other, she saw the pain and confusion in Emily and Richard's eyes. Sarah knew she needed to act carefully. She didn't want to destroy Emily's life, but she also couldn't ignore her husband's complex emotions. The crisis of confidence was now established, and the next decisions of Richard, Sarah, and Emily would determine whether this family could overcome the revelations or if everything would crumble under the weight of revealed secrets. The truth had been unearthed, and the consequences were just beginning to manifest. The revelation that Emily was Marcus's daughter deeply shook everyone. Richard was overwhelmed by a storm of emotions, while Emily struggled to understand her place in this new scenario. Sarah, observing the pain in both their eyes, made an unexpected decision. Instead of using the information to push Emily away, she decided to help the young woman discover the complete truth about her past. Sarah knew that the truth could be the key to healing for everyone. She believed that if Emily and Richard could fully understand what happened in the past, perhaps there was a chance for reconciliation. Sarah called Emily for a private conversation, offering her support that Emily didn't expect. "Emily, I know this is difficult for you, just as it is for Richard," Sarah began, her voice full of empathy. "But I believe there's more to this story, and I want to help you discover the complete truth about your past. Together we can unravel this, and maybe somehow find peace." Emily was surprised and relieved by Sarah's offer. She never imagined that Sarah, whom she always saw as distrustful and cold, would become her ally. Emily's gratitude was palpable. She knew she couldn't do this alone, and with Sarah's help, perhaps they could bring the answers they both sought. The two women began to work together discreetly and secretly. Sarah used the resources of the investigator she had previously hired, directing his skills to find more details about Marcus's past and the circumstances of his rivalry with Richard. They met at unlikely times, often late at night or in remote cafes, carefully discussing each new discovery. The investigation led them to old colleagues of Marcus, people who still remembered the tumultuous events that surrounded his disappearance. They discovered that Marcus had been a complex man with many facets that weren't publicly known. The disputes with Richard weren't as simple as they seemed. There were many layers of misunderstandings, mistakes, and possibly external manipulations. Sarah and Emily began to realize that the complete truth was much more intricate than they imagined. They found clues that Marcus had been manipulated by third parties interested in harming both him and Richard. This brought a new angle to the story, something that could change Richard's perception of the past. As Sarah and Emily deepened the investigation, the bond between them strengthened. Sarah began to see Emily not just as the daughter of a rival, but as a determined and courageous young woman who was seeking the truth about herself. Emily, in turn, came to trust Sarah as a mentor and ally, someone who was willing to face the dark past by her side. However, the tension at home continued. Richard noticed the growing closeness between Sarah and Emily without fully understanding what was happening. He was still dealing with his own internal demons, and the uncertainty about what Sarah and Emily were plotting only increased his anxiety. The conflict was in full development, with secrets being unraveled and new truths emerging. Sarah and Emily were committed to finding the complete truth, hoping that this could heal the wounds opened by the past. But the path was full of challenges, and the resolution was still distant, shrouded in mystery and uncertainty. As Sarah and Emily deepened their investigations, they began to unearth secrets about Richard's past that no one could have predicted. The first major revelation came from an old diary found among Marcus's belongings, kept by an old family friend. The diary contained details of secret meetings and business agreements that involved Richard and Marcus in a way that had never been publicly disclosed. Richard and Marcus, once allies in a bold venture, had been involved in a project that promised to revolutionize the sector in which they operated. However, the initial success soon turned into a bitter dispute for power and control, resulting in a rivalry that seemed irreparable. But the diary revealed something even more surprising: the existence of an agreement between them to protect their respective families in case of problems. Sarah and Emily were stunned to read about the secret meetings, shared strategies, and promises of mutual support. The most shocking, however, was discovering that Richard and Marcus had planned a pact to ensure the safety of each other's children. In a moment of lucidity and friendship, they had decided that if anything went wrong, they would take care of each other's children. This pact, buried under years of conflict, explained why Richard felt an inexplicable connection with Emily from the beginning. Sarah knew that this information needed to be shared with Richard, but she also knew that it would deeply shake him. She waited for the right moment to confront him, choosing a moment of tranquility at home. With the diary in hand, Sarah approached Richard. "Richard, we need to talk," she began, her voice firm but gentle. "There's something about the past you need to know, something that will change everything." Richard looked at Sarah with curiosity and concern. She handed the diary to him. As he leafed through the pages, his face transformed from surprise to disbelief, and finally to painful understanding. She's Marcus's daughter," he murmured, more to himself than to Sarah. "And we had a pact to protect our families." "Yes, Richard," Sarah replied. "And that's why you always felt this connection with her. You were fulfilling a promise you made long ago, even without realizing it." Richard needed time to process everything. The revelation brought forth an avalanche of emotions. He remembered the good times with Marcus before the disputes, the hopes and dreams they shared. But he also remembered the betrayal, the resentment, and the bitterness that followed. With this new perspective, Richard knew he needed to face his past to be able to move forward. He felt torn between resentment for what happened and responsibility for the pact he had made. The truth was painful, but it also offered a chance for redemption and reconciliation. Richard decided it was time to have an honest conversation with Emily. He needed to explain the past, admit his own mistakes, and understand hers. In doing so, he hoped not only to rebuild trust between them but also to honor the promise made to Marcus. Emily, upon hearing everything from Richard, felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief for finally understanding the connection between their families, and sadness for the circumstances that separated them. But she also saw an opportunity for healing and growth, both for her and for Richard. The family's secrets were finally emerging, and with them, the chance for a new beginning. The journey wouldn't be easy, but with the truth exposed, there was hope for a future where trust and understanding could flourish. Richard knew that facing his past was inevitable. With Marcus's diary in hand and the truth exposed, he prepared for the most difficult conversation of his life. Feeling the weight of the choices he had made, he summoned Emily and Sarah for a meeting in his living room, a space where so many family memories had been created. Richard began with a deep sigh, looking into Emily's eyes. "Emily, the truth about our parents and our connection is more complex than I could have ever imagined. I made difficult choices in the past, many of them motivated by pride and fear, but also by a desire to protect those I loved." Emily, seated next to Sarah, nodded slowly, ready to hear what Richard had to say. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, offering silent support. Richard continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "Marcus and I were more than rivals. Before all this, we were partners with a shared vision. However, ambition and mistrust separated us. We made a pact to protect our families, believing that regardless of what happened, we would keep our children safe. He handed the diary to Emily, allowing her to see with her own eyes the words written by her father. Emily leafed through the pages, absorbing the story she never knew. Tears streamed down her face as she read about her father's love and concern for her, even in the midst of chaos. Richard continued, I realized that by fulfilling this pact unconsciously, welcoming you into my company, I was trying to make peace with the past. However, my actions were also motivated by something deeper. I saw in you the same determination and resilience that I saw in Marcus. You deserve to know the truth and deserve a future free from the weight of these secrets. The family dynamic changed at that moment. Emily was no longer just the young woman determined to discover her past, but an integral part of a complex story involving love, betrayal, and redemption. Sarah, observing everything, saw the strength of character in Richard as he confronted his own flaws and opened his heart. Richard stood up and went to Emily, holding her hands. Emily, I know this doesn't erase the suffering you've faced, but I want you to know that you're part of this family. Let's work together to heal these wounds and build something new. Emily felt a wave of emotions. The revelation brought clarity, but it also brought a new responsibility. She now understood the weight of her father's legacy and the depth of Richard's commitment. Thank you, Richard, she said, her voice firm but full of emotion. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm ready to face this with you and build a better future. Sarah, moved by the sincerity of both, joined the embrace, feeling that finally the family was on the path to healing. The climax of this journey was not just the revelation of secrets, but the union of three people willing to face the past and shape a new future together. The truth had changed the family dynamic, bringing to light both pain and hope. But above all, there was a renewed sense of unity and purpose. The climax of this story was not just an end, but the beginning of a new journey together. After the intense revelation and confrontation with the past, Richard, Emily, and Sarah were facing a new challenge, rebuilding and protecting the new family they were forming. The journey to unite their lives would not be easy, but the desire to face the past and build a more harmonious future united them. Richard and Emily worked to establish a relationship based on mutual understanding and respect. The tension that previously separated them was beginning to dissipate, giving way to a partnership based on honesty and support. Richard dedicated himself to ensuring that Emily had all the opportunities she deserved, while Emily strived to show that despite the challenges, she was ready to be part of this new family dynamic. Sarah, in turn, became a crucial ally in this process. With her support and understanding, she helped mediate difficult conversations and promote an environment of forgiveness and acceptance. The relationship between Sarah and Emily strengthened, with both recognizing the vital role they played in each other's lives. As they worked together to create a new solid foundation for their family, Richard, Emily, and Sarah reflected on what family really means. They learned that family ties are not just about blood, but also about the choices we make and the love we decide to offer. Forgiveness, acceptance of the past, and the ability to start anew were fundamental to rebuilding their relationships. Richard, Emily, and Sarah were now more connected than ever, facing the future with new understanding and new hope. They knew that while the past couldn't be changed, their actions in the present could create a brighter future. And if you enjoyed this emotional story about reconciliation and discovery, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos full of inspiring and profound stories. We have a variety of content that explores fascinating and exciting themes, with narratives that touch the heart and make you reflect. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our updates. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.